Dhananjaya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Srila Prabhupada ki SCANDINAVIAN Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Varadaraja Sakarsa Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Shri Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasili Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan ki Shri Braja Bhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Shri Mathura Dham ki Shri Navadip Dham ki Shri Mayapur Dham ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladev ki Shri Shri Panchatattva ki Harinam Sankirtan ki Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki Bhakti Devi ki Tulsi Devi ki Ganga Mai ki Yamuna Mai ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki Nitai Gaur Pramanandi all glories to the Asama all glories to the Asama all glories to the Asama all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru all glories to Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Hare Krishna everybody. Thank you for attending the last seminar of the Bhakti Sangam Festival. So actually, I've kind of been making a mental note of different topics I'd like to discuss, and it's mostly during the time of 1975-1976 at the Krishna Balaram Temple. So I don't know if anyone's got a pencil and a piece of paper, just in case I forget some of the titles of the topics. Who would like to write them down? I'll give very brief. Thank you. So the first topic is Srila Prabhupada and the Magician. That's number one. Number two is Srila Prabhupada and the Prakrita Sahajya. Not related, by the way. Srila Prabhupada and Pundarik Das. And what else is there? Oh, yes, Prabhupada and Charanarvindam. So there's four, but I think there's about six altogether that I remember meditating on. But we can start with there's also the deity installation, 1975. Another one is Srila Prabhupada's lotus footprints. That's six, isn't it? There might be a couple more, but let's see. So the first one was entitled Prabhupada and the Magician. Is that right? Okay. So there happened to be a circus came to visit Mathura, and one of the special features of this particular circus group was they had this very famous magician, and so we asked Prabhupada if we could invite him to the temple to visit Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, okay, you can bring him. So we brought him into Prabhupada's darshan room, and of course, this is like a very special occasion. Not too many magicians visited Prabhupada, as far as I know. So it's quite unique, and the darshan room filled up very, very quickly because they were wondering, this is exciting, is the magician come to see Prabhupada, what's he going to do? And what he did was, he had this special silver rupee coin, and he had a matchbox. And so, and this is right in front of Srila Prabhupada. He started explaining the different types of tricks he could do, and Prabhupada said, all right, let's see what you can manage to perform here. Because it was light entertainment, obviously, and nothing philosophical. So, so he put the silver coin in the matchbox, and he showed it. He said, this is the matchbox. You can see there's two pieces. This piece slides into the matchbox, and I'm putting the coin inside the matchbox. And so he closed it, and then he tapped it, and he said, so you would imagine that the coin should still be there, isn't it? And we wondered, well, has he put it up his sleeve or something? And he opened it, the matchbox, and the coin had gone. And he then saw another producer from behind Srila Prabhupada's ear. So Prabhupada was kind of amused by that. Then he asked Prabhupada to hold the silver rupee coin in his right hand. And he told him to close his hand like this. And Prabhupada's, clutching the coin, obviously. Then he tells him to turn his hand over like this, which he does. And then the magician patted his hand, just like that, very lightly, on the back of his hand. And he said, you can still feel the coin in your hand, Swamiji? And Prabhupada said, yes, no, I'm holding on very tightly. And he said, all right, turn your hand over like this, which he did. And he said, open your hand. And he said, you can still feel the coin? He said, oh yes, I can still feel the coin. He said, open your hand. He opened his hand and it wasn't there. That was quite unique. Even Prabhupada was amazed. He said, how did you do that? How did you make this coin disappear? And again, the man said, oh, it's behind your left ear this time. Let me just pluck it out. And he showed it. And then Prabhupada said, all right, enough. Entertainment is over. It lasted like a few seconds, but I thought it was interesting just to mention that Prabhupada had his fun with this magician. And so the next topic is the Prakrita Sahaja, I think. There was this one particular gentleman who had come to the temple, and he would come for the 7 o'clock evening arati. And so he would dance in front of Krishna and Balaram. And he would dance in a peculiar way. Of course, we all have our own ways of dancing and expressing our love. But then what he did was, he wasn't just satisfied by dancing in a particular way. He would fall to the floor and he'd start rolling around. And some of the devotees were thinking, wow, this gentleman is feeling so much ecstasy from the kirtan. And then he would start to shudder and so on and so forth. But a lot of devotees thought, this is just a little too much. Generally speaking, of course, people come to the temple for kirtan, for arati, for darshan, and they behave themselves. But he was kind of like misbehaving. And so I went to the temple and saw what was going on. This man was lying on the floor, almost like unconscious. And we weren't quite sure how to go about dealing with this situation. So I went to Prabhupada's room, darshan room, and said, Prabhupada, there's this guest that's just come, and he was dancing very ecstatically in the kirtan. Then he collapsed to the ground and he started rolling around, and he stopped. And he's almost like unconscious. So Prabhupada said, well, I can assure you that if he is a genuine devotee who's feeling so much ecstasy in his body, he's come to this collapsed stage, then he won't feel you kicking him. But then again, if he's a pretender, a sahaja, then he will become very upset. So he said, I'm giving you the instruction, go back into the temple and kick him. Well, I know that instruction wasn't given to too many of Prabhupada's disciples. Anyway, I went back into the temple, paid my obeisances to Prabhupada and the deities, and saw this gentleman still lying prostrate on the floor. And of course I'd been given this particular instruction, which I followed to the letter, and I kicked him in the stomach. Not that bad that I would damage his stomach or anything, and just sufficient, just to, you can see the division between someone who's in real ecstasy and someone who's not. It turned out he definitely wasn't in real ecstasy. He immediately got up and started screaming at me, "How dare you kick me?" I said, "Well, just follow my spiritual message." "I will never come back to this temple again." So, thank you very much. It sounds cruel, but it wasn't cruel. It wasn't cruel. So, anyway, I just thought I'd share that experience with you. And there was a devotee called Pundarik, right? That's the next one. Pundarik. He was from Chicago, and he was a brahmachari, Pundarik Das brahmachari. And he had come to India for the very first time. And one of the things that he had prepared before coming to India was he had what's known as a photographic memory. And he had memorized every single text of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Not only had he memorized every single text, but he could at random actually recite in Sanskrit, then in English, any particular chapter, any particular verse. And I tested him. He said, "Test me." I said, "Okay. What's chapter 12, verse 6? Trying to make it as as difficult as possible because I can't even remember that verse." And so then he immediately responded with the text. So he said, I got initiated by Prabhupada by letter. I never got the opportunity to actually meet him personally. So what I'd like you to do is, could you please organize a meeting between myself and Srila Prabhupada, and you also tell him that I've memorized every single verse, every single text of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, in any random order. I thought it was kind of a strange sort of way to introduce somebody. You could just say, "I'm a brahmachari from Chicago, I've never met Prabhupada before, could you come with me because I feel a little shy?" No, he really wanted Prabhupada to know ahead of time, I thought. "I'm not sure how Prabhupada's going to receive you." And he said, no, please, this is just my first time in India, and I feel that I need to be introduced, and you're the temple president, so please do this for me. So kind of reluctantly, we went to Prabhupada's darshan room in his house, had our obeisances, and I said to Prabhupada, "Prabhupada, let me introduce you to Pundarik Das Brahmachari. He's from Chicago, and he's memorized every single text, every single verse of the Bhagavad Gita as it is." So then what Prabhupada did was kind of interesting. He looked at me, he didn't look at the brahmachari, and he said, "Make sure while he's staying here that he cleans the temple every day." And the brahmachari looked at me. And then Prabhupada said, "All right, now you may go." And so gave our obeisances, and this brahmachari said, "He didn't even look at me. And now he wants me to clean the temple every single..." He didn't even test me. So this is the moral of this story, is that you can't show off your prowess or show your pride in front of Krishna's pure devotee, because that's what's going to happen. He's going to completely ignore you and tell you to do something practical while you're visiting a temple. So you just see, Prabhupada was not at all impressed by this particular thing. So the point is that we shouldn't memorize things and then repeat them parrot fashion and think that we're some great devotee. And the other moral to this story is that he was the only son. He came from a very wealthy family. His father didn't have a very nice job, actually. He worked for a magazine called Playboy magazine, that you might have heard of, which is owned by a gentleman, well, I don't know if he's a gentleman, anyway, it's owned by Hugh Hefner, who lives in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. And so his father was the director of the Playboy company in the branch in Chicago. And he had flown out with his wife to visit Hugh Hefner on business, and they were regular, visitors to Los Angeles, so they insured themselves. They had this special life insurance that they took out both for the wife and the husband for 4 million each one. So there was a total of $8 million. So if there was any major catastrophe, that their only son, who was as Pundarik would inherit $8 million. And as fate would have it, this jumbo, this Boeing 747 that they were flying on from Los Angeles to Chicago O'Hare Airport, which is a major hub right in the heart of America, their plane collided with another jumbo jet above O'Hare Airport. And it was one of the worst public, plane disasters ever in the history of aviation. And over 800 people died in that collision above O'Hare Airport. And actually, of course, Pundarik's parents also died. So now there's like a whole sort of routine of getting that insurance money. It doesn't come the next day, it takes forever. It appears like that because there's so many court hearings and so many experts and so on and so forth, and correspondence and files. But eventually, within I think a year and a half after his parents were killed, and he was still living in the Brahmachari ashram in the Chicago temple all this time. He hadn't left, he had stayed, he'd become a book distributor, and he kind of got over the fact that he was treated by Prabhupada like that. But that's not the end of the story. As soon as that $8 million was deposited in his bank account, he packed up all of his belongings, left the Brahmachari ashram, and was never seen again. So you can understand, Prabhupada actually, because Prabhupada was Trikalagya, he knew past, present, and future. He kind of knew because Krishna was there as a super soul informing him about this particular devotee, that he would maintain a so-called position because he had no other place to go because now his parents were dead and so on and so forth. So he stayed in the ashram until that $8 million was deposited into his personal bank account. So there's so many stories to be learned from this particular incident. Yes?
Did Pundarika Prabhu walk in the temple as Prabhupada asked him and was in Vrindavan?
Reluctantly he did, yeah. He wasn't very happy, but he performed that service, which goes to his credit, obviously. Okay, so that's that topic. Then there's, what's the fifth one? Oh yeah, there was an English brahmachari called Charanaravindam Das, and he was quite a character. He was quite theatrical. He liked to wear loose clothing, loose robes, and dance like Lord Chaitanya. Sometimes he'd be like this, and sometimes like this. In the kirtan, you might have seen paintings of traditional Bengali kirtans. And he was also quite artistic. In fact, he's the devotee who designed and also constructed a little Shiva fountain in Prabhupada's back garden, which is still there. I don't think maybe it still works because, we have salty water in that area and the salt really corrodes the pipes. But he had made 5 little heads of Lord Shiva, and that's where the water sprinkled from his magic locks. And it was a very nice little fountain that he made. And sometimes he was in Vrindavan and sometimes he left. And I remember on a particular morning walk, it was in the rainy season, and it was, actually the Jamuna had flooded, and he had been in Nepal, and he had adopted this little Nepali boy, and he wanted to go on the morning walk. This is another example of Prabhupada being Trikalagya. And so he saw this devotee, Charanaravindam, who just returned from Nepal, this little Nepali boy who was sitting on his shoulders. He was quite tall, he was over 6 foot tall. And Prabhupada said, "Don't go on the morning walk this morning." He told him specifically, he saw him, and of course there were about 20 or 30 other devotees as well, but he actually remarked, he said, "Don't go on this walk this morning with us." Of course, he didn't follow Prabhupada's instruction, And we were expecting Prabhupada to go on the normal route, which is up, at that time the road was called Chatikara Road, now it's called Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg. And he would go up to a certain little building and then turn back. It would take half an hour to go one way and half an hour to come back. But that morning, when we got to the Perkama Marg, which is the little road that circumambulates Vrindavan, he turned right, and we started going down towards the floodplain of the Jamuna. In those days, it was a beautiful, dusty track. There wasn't a paved road or anything. It was really, you could feel the atmosphere was timeless, and so many cows were brought along that particular Perkama Marg, and there was all this dust being raised, and it was just very, very rural and very quiet, and no tractors and so on, just animals and simple carts. Anyway, that particular day, because it had been raining very heavily, there was about a meter of water, or a little bit more, on that particular dusty path, which is no longer dusty, it's very muddy and full of water. And there was a wall which was sticking up out of the water, and the top of the wall was like this. It was rounded. It wasn't flat, it wasn't like this, it was like this. And so Prabhupada got up on this wall, and he very expertly walked along the top of the wall. And then all of us, of course, who were on the morning walk had to follow Prabhupada before behind him. We were, it was a little dodgy, you can say, because it was quite slippery because it was also raining. And then I noticed that Charna Arvindan had been hanging at the back behind us, and he came up on the wall, and Prabhupada noticed him. And as he was walking, he got maybe halfway, then he slipped, and he fell into the meter water. And of course, the little kid was upset, Charna Arvindan was soaked, and it was a very unpleasant experience, let's put it that way. Of course, they weren't injured or anything, but this is what happened. So Prabhupada turned to him and he said, I knew this was going to happen if you came in the morning walk, and that's why I told you don't come, but you disobeyed my order. So if one wants to be a real servant of the Master, then one has to follow the Master's instructions. Even though they appear not so important, but everything to do with Srila Prabhupada was important. Even this little insignificant moment that happened. But, Prabhupada was always our well-wisher. He was wishing us well. That's why he'd always sign his letters, an ever well-wisher. But then again, if we refuse to follow his instructions, then that's our destiny, to be in trouble. What was the next? Oh yeah, just before we had the Pran Pratishtha ceremony in the Krishna Balaram temple, Prabhupada called me to his darshan room, his living room, and he said, we're going to be holding the Pran Pratishtha ceremony in about a week or 10 days' time. He said, have you seen the deities? And I said, no, Srila Prabhupada. He said, oh, they're kept in the back room of my house. Go and have a look and see what you think. And so I went there and I paid my obeisance to the deities, and I noticed, because I think I mentioned that it was a combination of Bharadwaj and Jamuna. They were in charge of overseeing the carving of the deities in Jaipur. And many of our temples in the 70s, obviously, we had deities from Jaipur, but those deities came with marble clothes. Already, the way that they were carved, Krishna had a dhoti, and Radharani had a sari, and they also had crowns, all carved out of marble. Just one solid piece of marble. And they were also painted and so on. But those deities were completely smooth. Because if you're a deity pujari and you've dressed large marble deities, it's sometimes quite difficult for the clothing to fit, over the marble clothing that's already existing on the deity. But in this particular situation, all the deities were very smooth. They were just wearing, the men were wearing kopans and the ladies were wearing, it was smooth. Everything was very smooth. And I actually made a comment after it came out. I said, Prabhupada, I think the Pujaris will be very happy when they see how smooth the deities are and how easy it will be able for them to dress them in their clothing. And then for some reason I said, changing the subject, I said, Srila Prabhupada, we know that this temple is going to be called the Krishna Balaram temple because the central altar will be where the Krishna Balaram deities are installed. And many devotees have been asking me, what about Radha Krishna? Have you chosen a name? What can we call those deities? And then Prabhupada, I don't know why he did this, but he said, no, I haven't thought of a name. Can you suggest a name? He asked me. And I was put on the spot, and I said, what about Radha Shyam Sundar? He said, yes. Let us call them Radha Shyam Sundar. So he gave me that special blessing, special opportunity to name Radha Krishna as Radha Shyam Sundar. And a few days later, no, it was actually after the Pran Pratishtha, the life-giving ceremony that lasted 1 week, and which was performed by all the local Brahmins and Goswamis. And the reason for that was Prabhupada didn't want the locals to criticize that at the Angrejika Mandir, Angreji means English or foreign, at the foreign temple, foreigners' temple, that we were unfit to install deities, that they themselves, install the deities, and of course they're not going to criticize themselves. And also Prabhupada gave every single one of those different Brahmins and Pujaris and Goswamis an envelope with some money inside, according to their status. Then one envelope would be 5 rupees, another 11 rupees, 21 rupees, 51 rupees, 101 rupees, 1,001 rupees, according to their status. So they not only installed the deities, they were also given Lakshmi, donation, a hand, directly from the hand of Srila Prabhupada, which is quite unique, I thought. So after that, once we had gone into the routine of, attending Mangal Arati and having darshan of the deities and so on and so forth, Prabhupada called me again. We called me quite regularly, being the temple president, I suppose. I had this really kind of serving relationship with Prabhupada. Actually, Prabhupada was really in charge of everything, and I was his gopher. I'd go for this and go for that. And he was actually giving all the instructions. And I felt actually very protected by Srila Prabhupada like that, because he knew exactly what should be done and what should not be done. So he said, now that we've installed these deities, I've been considering that we should chant a certain mantra to glorify those deities on the altar. And so the mantra goes like this: Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jaya Krishna Balaram. Can everyone say that? Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jaya Krishna Balaram. So he said that this will serve 2 purposes. The first one is that right behind our Krishna Balaram guest house, there's what's known as the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam ashram. Of course, their mantra is Rasabas. They sing Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. But he said, no, we're not chanting that. We're chanting the names of all the deities on the altar. Nitai Gaur, Nitai, Radhe Shyam Sundar, and then Jai Krishna Balaram. So he said, this is a unique mantra that should be chanted by the devotees and also the visiting devotees when they come to this temple. And the deities will be very happy to hear that we're singing this special mantra. So we can repeat again. Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jaya Krishna Balaram. And it's completely bona fide. This is not coming from my mind, this is coming from the mind of Srila Prabhupada. Have you heard this before?
No.
You ask asking me, I didn't know. So what has become manifest, which became manifest, because actually the project wasn't really finished until about the end of 1998. So the Prabhupada was giving this vision in 1975. So just see, and exactly it turned out what the way that Prabhupada wanted it to be at MBT. And Alita Saki Prabhu, she served there, making so many pizzas in the MBT restaurant. And I think perhaps some of you have visited that guest house as well in the MBT complex. And he also said there should be some distance away from the temple, in the forest, a Vanaprastha ashram. So this is this vision at that time. What's the last? Oh, just like here, of course, you have Prabhupada's Buddha's footprints. And in fact, they look identical to the footprints at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And so I wanted for posterity for Prabhupada to give his footprints in Vrindavan. And so I prepared a little wooden box with soft clay in it, big enough for Prabhupada to stand on. And so I brought that in, and I said, Srila Prabhupada, would you be so kind as to allow us to take an impression of your lotus feet? And he said, I remember, I did that for New Vrindavan already. I said, well, why do you do it for Old Vrindavan? He said, okay. So what he did was, we put the wooden box right next to the fireplace, and Prabhupada stood up. He rested one or two fingers on the mantelpiece, the top part of the fireplace, and stood directly on the clay for a few seconds, then stepped off. And the footprints were absolutely perfect. There was no smudging. We didn't have to do it twice or 3 times, because sometimes, it doesn't work out, because it's quite a delicate thing. But they're absolutely perfect impressions. And then I took that clay in the box. I took it to Delhi. I took it to this silver wall called Ramchandra, Krishna Chandra, and Dariba Kalan in Old Delhi. And I asked if they could make Prabhupada's footprints using pure silver. So I asked how much, because we could see the measurements. I said, how much silver do you think will be required to make these lotus feet impressions? They said, 1 kilo, we can do it using 1 kilo of silver. Of course, I don't know what the silver rate now is, but at that time, it was 2,000 rupees a kilo, 1976. And,
About 50,000 today.
how much?
50,000 kilo rupees.
50,000 rupees, that's about 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay, I think in that time it was about 10 rupees, 20 rupees to the pound. So 2,000 rupees is how much?
No, 2,000.
It was 2,000 rupees divided by 20, 100 pounds, something like that. Yeah, silver hasn't gone up as much as gold has gone up. So I made 3 silver lotus footprint impressions. One went to Los Angeles, near Dwarka. One went to Denver, Colorado. And one went to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And I was wondering, where did this come from? Where did these, was an absolute spitting image, not spitting, it shouldn't be some word, but they're the absolute image of the lotus impressions in Bhaktivedanta Manor. You don't know, nobody knows the origin?
I don't remember, we've had it for a very long time now.
It was brought here when Kirtias was.
Kirtias. So then he must have taken an impression from Prabhupada's lotus footprints from the manor, or Los Angeles, possibly too. Yeah.
Because this I can buy in Radhadesh.
You can buy in Bangladesh.
Yeah, they're selling in the boutique.
How much?
I don't know. But they
Not the gold.
This is not silver.
silver. Yeah, silver. They're silver.
I think this is plaster.
Gold.
Gold leaf on plaster.
Dhananjaya, but aren't these little bigger than life size?
No.
That's so big.
Providence. Yeah, quite big. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dhananjaya Prabhu, and it's so nice that you also described that scene with the moon and how Prabhupada catch the nail follows, so expert on all details. And when we read about Srila Prabhupada's life, he said the Western disease that we have a tendency to break down, renew and change. So I would like to ask, did you ever hear Srila Prabhupada sing Krishna or Ramo, who is very much fashion now? It's some new thing. I mean, I came in the coming room, but it's something. Please forgive me for asking, but I want to
Well,
know.
quite honestly, you know better than me because there's so many recordings of Prabhupada leading kirtan. So I think these recordings can
Speak.
speak for themselves.
How did Srila Prabhupada get the land of Ramanakti?
That's interesting. Well, there was this Marwari family, Mr. and Mrs. Saraf, and there's Gita Devi Saraf is still alive, actually, her husband passed away. And they kept Radha Krishna deities in their home, they had their personal home deities, family deities. And they heard that Prabhupada was looking for a place somewhere in that area. And of course, in those days, I'm talking about 1971, Raman Reti was considered very remote and very dangerous. There was very few houses out there, and certainly no temples. And it was right at the edge of the town of Vrindavan. That area is called the Chungi. Chungi is a place where whenever any goods were brought from outside of Vrindavan, the tax collector was sitting right by that barrier. And so if you brought, lots of plastic buckets or something, say from Mathura or Delhi, and you paid less money than you would have paid in Vrindavan, then you had to pay the difference. So that was the kind of situation there. And also, Prabhupada was discouraged like anything, even to look at land there, because the locals said, no one will even think of going there. It is far too remote and too dangerous. They'll be attacked, they'll be robbed, maybe they'll be killed. So all these rumors were flying around. And so the Saraf family had this piece of land that they had never done anything with. And the devotees knew about this. It was through this, his name was Mr. Patak. And Mr. Patak knew all about the different owners of different pieces of land. And he had actually recommended the Saraf family as a family possibly they would give a donation. So Mr. Saraf was not really 100% convinced, and Gita Devi said, well, let's leave it up to our deities to decide. So what they did was they got little pieces of paper and wrote, in one piece they put yes, meaning yes, we should give the donation, and no, we shouldn't give this donation. Then they put these little pieces of folded paper in front of the deities, and they waited for a sign. And right about that time they were making these little paper envelopes to put in front of the deities. A little breeze came in, and one of the pieces of paper fell off the altar, and they thought, this is a sign, for sure. And so they opened it, and it was yes. Because Prabhupada actually told them, he said, you give us the land as a donation, and we'll, obviously construct a temple. And you'll get so much punya, so much sukriti, so much benefit, spiritual benefit by doing this. But there was this envious person, I think I mentioned her name the other day. She came to London, and I told you about how She tried to captivate or capture Jamuna by giving her a set of Radha Krishna deities. She had an ashram very nearby, and she didn't like competition. So she sent some gundas. You know what gundas are? Not very pleasant people. You shouldn't associate with gundas, or dacoits, to that matter also. And they actually went to the construction site. There was a big hole because, you know, the tradition is that there's a deity of Sheshanaya that's installed in the pit. And there's some coins put there and some precious gems and so on. I'm not exactly sure of the precise order, but to make it auspicious, to make it sanctified. And what they did was, before the ceremony of putting Sheshanaya and everything, they went to that pit and they defecated. You know what that means, to defecate?
Yeah.
To pass stool.
Exactly.
Yeah, to pollute the whole thing. They were that envious. But besides that, really nothing else happened. Prabhupada said, you know, that we can purify the whole place by engaging in bhakti yoga, by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So against all odds, you can say, Prabhupada started the work. And there was an Indian gentleman who became Prabhupada's disciple in London in 1969. They were the very first Indian family to completely surrender to Srila Prabhupada. They were all Guptas. They were from Uttar Pradesh. And Mr. Gupta used to keep a big stock of Gita Press books, which are famous. And in fact, Prabhupada, he met the founder of the Gita Press. His name is Hanuman Prasad Podar. And he had produced a tiny little Gita in Hindi about that size that cost a rupee. And actually Prabhupada was really kind to this gentleman. He went to Gorakhpur. Gorakhpur is, of course, in UP, close to the Nepal border. And that's where the Gita Press had their headquarters. And Prabhupada was always discussing with Hanuman Prasad Podar how they could work together to spread Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, so this Mr. Gupta became Kiradakshaya Vishnu. His wife got initiated, his 3 sons also got initiated, all at the same time, which was quite unique. And that was in 1969. Then they wanted Prabhupada to install Radha Krishna deities in their home. And at that time, their business was, he was a shopkeeper. And of course he sold everything in his shop, and they lived above the premises. And so Prabhupada noticed, as he was, because the only way to get to their apartment was to walk through the shop. And he saw what he was selling. And he said, well, if you want to worship Radha Krishna in your home, then you have to get rid of all those nasty things that you're selling downstairs. So then he transformed it into a laundromat. And actually what he said was, I can remember very clearly, because Nanda Kishore was Prabhupada's servant at the time. And so he also assisted in installing those deities. So Prabhupada said to him directly, said, these deities are direct representatives of Radha Landanishwaram. So whatever donations you get, you should give to Dhananjaya, so that those deities go to Radha Landanishwaram. You don't keep them, because already he's a businessman. So for a couple of weeks, he gave something from his donation box, because he made a big donation box to put in front of his deities. But then he stopped after that, after a few weeks. But Prabhupada never actually commented anything. But he was happy that he had given up all these nasty things and made a laundromat downstairs.
What was the year that the jet flew off Malta? Which was year?
1971.
I mean, Prabhupada installed so many Radha Krishna murtis, but how come Krishna Balaram is in the middle and not Sri Sri Radha?
Well, see, the name Raman Reti means where Krishna and Balaram used to enjoy the soft sands of Jamuna, because the Jamuna flowed there 5,000 years ago. So Reti means sand, and Raman means to enjoy the soft sands, because the sand is like powder, very, very wonderful. So therefore, because that was a pastime that was going on with Krishna and Balaram, that's why he made the temple with Krishna Balaram Mandir. And it just so happened that in another part of Vrindavan, on the way to Mathura, there was a Krishna Balaram Goshala. And that Goshala was 500 acres of land. And one of the trustees was Jai Dayal Dalmia, J.D. Dalmia. Dalmia is even today, is famous for manufacturing cement and ghee. Have you heard of Dalmia?
Yes.
You've heard?
Yes. I lived in nursing.
Yeah.
It's a brand.
He was a big industrialist, almost as big as the Björnens. Not as big as the Björnens, but they were up there.
There is a city named after him. It's called Dalmia Nagar.
Dalmia Nagar. Who's that voice?
The city after him.
Where's that? In Orissa especially, I know they have lots of factories. Which part of India you're from?
I'm from Jharkhand.
Jharkhand, which used to be
A part of Bihar.
Bihar. Yeah.
So it's close to Orissa actually.
Yes. Anyway, so he's a very pious man. And so he actually wanted to donate that 500-acre Krishna Balaram Goshala. And they kept about 400 cows at that time. So someone of the Prabhupada contacted this Jai Dayal Dalmia, who was very favorable, liked Srila Prabhupada a lot. So I went as Prabhupada's representative, I went over to the Goshala and waited to meet with this Mr. Dalmia. And I expected, obviously, him being a big industrialist, that he would have a big fancy car. But guess what? He came in a beat-up ambassador car. And I could not believe the number of people that came out. It wasn't just him alone with the driver. It was like his whole, family. And I counted 15. Am I saying these things? I was not going to do. 15 fitted inside an ambassador car. Put your hand up if you've ever been inside an ambassador car. Is that unbelievable or what? I mean, they're not that big, and very uncomfortable. But someone or other, they adjust, they go like this, they're sitting different ways and sitting on each other's lap and sitting on the driver's lap practically speaking. Because it's just all these big seats, right? They don't have individual seats, they just have a big long thing back and a big long thing in the front. That's how he travelled. And this is, a very respectable, mega wealthy industrialist. But he was so pious, so incredibly pious and humble. He didn't mind travelling with 14 other people in the same car. And we had a nice meeting, and we discussed this thing, and he said, oh yes, I would very much like that, your Swamiji becomes, in charge of our Goshala. I'm sure wonderful things. But unfortunately, he was one trustee of many. There's about 8 or 9 trustees. And the other trustees had never really heard of Prabhupada, didn't really know any history of his and so on and so forth. And therefore, unfortunately, the land never became handed over to ISKCON. But, of course, we do have a Bhaktivedanta Goshala, Bhaktivedanta Swami Goshala. And that land was purchased in 1980. And that land was purchased from the owner for 250,000 rupees. And I think it was about 8 acres or something like that. A very large piece of land, really. Along with the Taparia house that I mentioned where we lived for some time. That also was right next to the big piece of land, the 8-acre piece of land. Now that land is worth crores and crores and crores.
Where is the clay imprints that you got?
You can find them in one of the display cabinets in Prabhupada's house. It's there.
question to your first story with the magician. It was that magician which Prabhupada asked, you can do this trick with the coin, but can you mitigate birth or age and disease? And he said no, and Prabhupada said I can. But it was another magician. I've heard that story.
It's possible because I was really not in the room. I was half in and half out because there was just so many devotees there. I just could see what he was doing with the phone. But Prabhupada didn't really keep him for a long time because, you get a little bit bored because he couldn't really do that much with that rupee phone. It's kind of limited. But we did have another magician who came to Mayapur and he did a whole presentation. And he was the son of a very, very not world famous, but super famous Indian magician, a Bengali magician. Would you know?
PC Sarkar.
PC Sarkar Jr. See, you know that name. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for helping me out. But that was who came. PC Sarkar Jr. You're from Bengal?
No, I'm from Odisha.
From Orissa, but he's also famous in Orissa too, all over India. He would carry water, right?
So a few years before, he kind of in illusion removed the Taj Mahal in front of the audience.
Yes.
Newspaper.
Yes. And everyone was convinced that this was really happening.
Yeah.
And what they did was they constructed a stage according to their, way that they were doing their magic. And he did cutting the lady in half and, the usual things. And this special water, what do they call it? When they pour the water? They would empty the jug and put it on a table. And 4 or 5 times they'd go to the same jug and it was already emptied. Water of India, I think that's what they call it. Water of India, I think. We had about 20,000 local villagers came to watch this free magic show in Mayapur. PC Sarkar Jr. Thank you so much for it. Is he still doing those things?
I think so. Junior is active.
Yeah.
It's senior now.
Senior is known.
No, his father was the really expert magician, PC Sarkar. Yes.
I was just wondering, what was the transition from Glory Place to Soho? Was there, why did you give up Glory Place?
Well, because we purchased Soho Street property in 1976. And that was done through the help of Mr. Charles Patel and Mr. P. Patel. I can't remember his first name. But they helped to get the financing together. And that property cost £260,000 at that time.
And it was still in progress?
No. Yeah, actually it was, 1976, but Prabhupada never saw the Soho Street property. But yeah, we gave it up because we purchased something, so we didn't need the 2 places. So we were renting number 7 Bury Place. And of course we had Bhakti rented Manor at that time too, because we moved into the Manor in 1973, 2 years before that. Anything you want to ask? Yes?
Just wanted, I heard from one of my friends that Prabhupada never installed any deities other than Radha Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath. Is it true? Because in many temples I have seen other deities also now.
As far as I know, it's true. Even in Mumbai, they have Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman deities, but they were installed afterwards. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but Prabhupada installed Radha Rasa Bihari, even before there was a temple, which is like a temporary shelter. Just like also at Bhaktivedanta Manor, we have deities of Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, but they were installed after Prabhupada left. They were installed in 1982.
Wasn't there Jagannath deities in Prabhupada's?
Oh yes, so he mentions Jagannath. He's talking about Radha Krishna, Jagannath, and Gauri. But certainly he didn't install like Lord Nrsimhadev. Lord Nrsimhadev in Mayapur. We have one in southern Germany, but those deities also were not installed by Srila Prabhupada.
And Krishna Balaram.
And of course, Krishna Balaram was installed by Prabhupada in 1975, Ram Navami. In fact, next year is the 40th anniversary of the installation of those deities. Thank you.
You said that in Prabhupada's time you're like in prison and you're running errands all the time. Who is his personal servant in that time? Or you got to servant children?
Well, there was Upendra. Upendra was Prabhupada's servant in Vrindavan at that time.
I heard that nice story about how Prabhupada saw very clearly how we live in West and the Western mentality is so destructive. Once he took some medicine and he was asking his servant, I don't know, in that time, whether he was a man or a Nava, and he said, did you close the bottle? He said, no. He said, this is your great sickness in the Western world. You're opening so many bottles and you never close them.
I'm hearing this for the first time.
Yeah, it's pretty problem because. So then he related to the global warming and so many bottles are opening this and that and so many speculation. Now this problem is on now and for 5 years there will be another bottle open and another bottle open. Actually Prabhupada saw this for 30, 35 years ago, very clearly.
And you're saying bottle or bottle?
Bottle.
Bottle, glass bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
many battles have also been going on too. And they've been contributing to all kinds of terrible things. I think the battles make worse enemies than bottles. Of course, Prabhupada we never thought of buying bottled water for Srila Prabhupada. But, for us, when we go to India, that's the first thing we think of is buying bottled water. Opening bottles, you're talking about opening bottles. The devotees have opened millions of bottles of water, plastic bottles especially. But Prabhupada liked well water. He liked to take from the well. In fact, when Prabhupada was feeling any discomfort with his digestion, there's a special temple actually in Orissa, in Bhubaneswar. It's called the Gaurikeda Mandir. Gaurikeda Mandir is not far from the main...
It's near the old town, near Linga restaurant.
Yes. You've been there?
I belong to that place.
You belong to that place?
Bhubaneswar.
Oh. Hare Krishna. So you're living in a very, very auspicious place, Bhubaneswar. And so that water is very famous for digestion problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the well is hot. So many people are going and taking water, but the water level never changes. It always remains the same, no matter how much water is taken out. So we used to actually fill up 20-liter containers with this water and bring to Vrindavan or Mayapur or wherever, and Prabhupada took it for his digestion. So if you ever have any digestive problems, you happen to be in that part of the world in Orissa, then you go to the Gaurikeda Mandir. I've tasted myself, I have to say it's delicious tasting water. I'm sure you've taken many times if you're living.
No, I have never taken it.
You've never taken it? Oh, you should. If you have any problems, even if you don't have problems, you should.
I didn't know the special quality. I have been to that place, but I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah.
This is Krishna's arrangement. Or Lord Shiva's arrangement also. What's the name of that big temple in Bhubaneswar?
Lingaraj.
Lingaraj, yes.
It's very massive Sivlinga.
And of course you must have been to ISKCON Bhubaneswar on NH38.
Yeah.
And we have darshan of... There's also Krishna Balaram there, Jagannath and Radha Krishna. And you still don't get to the water. Actually, I asked Prabhupada one time because when we opened the temple in 75, the water was as sweet as sugarcane juice. I'm not exaggerating, it was so sweet. And Prabhupada actually said, this is Balaram's mercy. But then it quickly turned salty. And I asked Prabhupada, I said, Prabhupada, living practically in a desert area, how is it there's so much water underneath in the ground? He said, because it is ocean water. And I said, but we're 1,000 miles from the ocean. So then he went like this with his hand. He said there are different strata. So the ocean is here, and it's unlimited. So then there's water filtering through different types of rock, gravel, sand, and so on. And he said, when you have sweet water, it means that all the salt is being filtered out. But then he went to say that 65% of well water is salty, because it's ocean water. Does that make sense?
Prabhupada, special rasa with Bon Maharaj.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned his name. In 1975, Prabhupada wanted to go and see his godbrother Bon Maharaj, and his ashram was further down towards the center of town, of Vrindavan. And Prabhupada went with a mission. He wanted to request Bon Maharaj to donate some of his college land, because just across from our Krishna Balam temple, behind the shops, Bon Maharaj owned 60 acres of land, and he had built a college there. And he wasn't using all the land, so Prabhupada, we went with him, and Bon Maharaj was very polite, and Prabhupada was saying, we want our children to be educated in Vrindavan. We want to build a Gurukul for our children. And you've got so much land that you're not using. So please, would you like to donate 1 acre, only 1 acre out of your 60 acres? Then Bon Maharaj said, actually, perhaps we can come to some arrangement, because I need a library. So if you can build a library for my college, then we can talk about getting 1 acre for your Gurukul. So it seemed all polite and very nice and, very respectable, like two respectable gentlemen talking. And then on the way back in the car, we were asking Prabhupada, what happened, because we were speaking in Bengali at that time, we weren't speaking in English, so we didn't understand exactly the conversation, but we could understand a little bit. And so Brahmananda was the one who asked Prabhupada, so what was the conclusion with your meeting? Were you happy with that meeting? And Prabhupada said, happy? He said, even if Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally came before Bon Maharaj with a straw in his mouth and fell at his feet begging for land, he would refuse.
Wow.
Talk about being heavy. He's talking about his own godbrother. So we understood immediately that this was just all mental games that were going on between Bon Maharaj and Prabhupada. He wasn't at all interested in helping us for one, tiny, pinpoint of land belonging to him. So then, what did Prabhupada do? He started, because he still wanted the Gurukul to be built. And we had this very nice gentleman, Vishwambar Dayal Agarwal, also known as Bhagaji, who lived just a few minutes away from the temple. And so what Prabhupada said, again, I'm just giving an example of how magnanimous and loving Prabhupada was. He said, I want you to go and visit our dear friend Bhagaji and ask him if he could like to purchase this one field. There's one field right at the roadside. And I said, but Prabhupada, you're the founder Acharya, you're the one who wants this Gurukul built. Surely you should be the one who should be asking him and not me. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, if you ask, he will not refuse. What qualification do I have? It's just like a new kid on the block, just moved there like a year ago. And he insisted, he said, no, you go. So I went, again, following Prabhupada's instruction, if you want to be a good servant, first of all, you have to have a good master to be a good servant. And that master has to give you perfect instructions, and if you follow those instructions, then that's the perfection of your life. So I went to Bhagaji, and I said, you know, we would really like to have a gurukul on this empty piece of land right next to the temple, right on the road. Would you like to help us? And guess what? He didn't refuse. He said, yes, I'll help. Not only did he buy the land, but he negotiated with, there was 4 brothers involved. And those brothers didn't live in Vrindavan, they lived in Muzaffarnagar. And Muzaffarnagar is closer to Haridwar than it is to, right? Muzaffarnagar is on the way to Haridwar, Rishikesh. Yeah? You know. Merit.
Yeah.
And yeah, district of Merit.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he would go there, and it's a long journey. It's not an easy journey either in those days, in the 70s. And he negotiated with the brothers, he got them all to come together, then they all had to sign, not just one signature, 4 signatures. And they all had to agree, obviously, as well, because, you know, talk about, you know, how complicated land deals are. Land deals and, you know, all the different, you know, family members involved. Sometimes these land deals can go on for years and years and decades, you know. So, but they accepted, they said, yes, we accept your offer, and they signed on the dotted line and everything. So he did all that, and we didn't pay 1 rupee towards all those legal fees and so on and so forth. He said with one condition, and that condition is that you put a plaque on the side of the building once you have the building constructed, and you put my mother's name. Not even his own name, he wanted his mother's name. And you'll see that plaque. If you ever go to the Vrindavan complex, and you'll see where the Gurukul starts, and where Prabhupada's, you know, Samadhi Mandir, and the museum is, on that side there's a plaque with the name of Vishwambara's mother. And the foundation stone laying ceremony was held on Radhastami, 1970, 75 or 76, I can't remember. But it was Radhastami. It might have been 75. It's either 75 or 76. But that's when we got that land. By the wonderful contribution given by Prabhupada's personal friend, Vishwambara Dayal Bhavamal.
This rasa between Prabhupada and Bal Maharaj, it goes back into the 30s, 40s.
I can't talk about that. I just know that, of course, we know the history, that he was one of those representing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in London, and they met this Lord Zetland, and Lord Zetland asked Bal Maharaj along with his godbrother, is it possible, can I become a Brahmana? He wanted to know that. So then he told him, well, if you want to become a Brahmana, you have to give up meat, fish and eggs, onions and garlic, no illicit sex, no alcohol, no intoxication, including tea and coffee, no gambling and betting. And then when he heard that, he said, then it is impossible. No, he didn't say that, he just said it's impossible, I can't follow that. So then he came back with the news to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when he returned, that it was impossible to make any Brahmanas in the West. But Prabhupada proved them wrong.
Yes.
In fact, he said once in Veritas, he said, where my sannyasi godbrothers have failed, my grihastha devotees have succeeded. That's how much he loved his grihasthas, his householders. And had so much faith in them also. But I think we have to finish, is that right, 1:45? Because lunch will be at 2 o'clock. It runs from 12:15 to 2. No, 1:40. So are you liking this information I'm giving you?
Yeah. More.
No one's falling asleep so far? Yes.
Did you meet any Prabhupada's children?
not in Vrindavan, we met his son, Navadvip Chandra, in Mayapur. And his daughter, of course, she was the granddaughter of Prabhupada. She used to offer her grandfather a garland every morning in the Mayapur temple. And she married a disciple of Jayapataka Maharaj, and she also took initiation from Jayapataka Maharaj. But unfortunately, some years ago, when there was a major flood, she drowned, and the baby too. Right.
Yeah, she might say.
What was her name?
Oh, I remember her husband, Suditan Bey, I think. But he was devastated.
Yeah, of course
he
he
lost the faith and
Yeah. And her father was absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
Not a big
She
child.
stepped off the boat where the Bhakti Vinod Thakur's school is close to Yoga Petra,
Yeah.
and the current just stood
Yeah.
there. That was unfortunate. Many very good place to go.
So our suggestion is don't plan to go to Mayapur during the rainy season. It's very dangerous.
But isn't it also a blessing to go leave the body in the
It's difficult for the husband and for the father
It's
to understand all those things. Was there any other questions?
And other children, Prabhupada.
Really, my only connection with Prabhupada's family was that he told me to open up a fixed deposit account in the Syndicate Bank in Vrindavan, 1976, and he told me to deposit 100,000 rupees, 1 lakh of rupees. And he said, make sure that the interest from this fixed deposit goes to my wife. He was actually always thinking of his wife, naturally, because she bore his children, they were together for so many years, and he understood how much her life changed when he left the house. But of course, look how much change we've gone through. All of us, we'd never have seen the day when there was an International Society for Krishna Consciousness if Prabhupada hadn't made that step out of family life. In fact, he had a dream just before taking sannyas, and he said it was a horrible dream because this Guru Maharaj was telling him, now you have to take sannyas after that incident with the biscuits and the tea and the books. He thought that sannyas was horrible. That's how Prabhupada described it. Horrible thoughts come into the mind. But still he did it.
Did you meet Rishikeshananda, who that's the son?
Yes.
How was Prabhupada dealing with him very kindly? He said it was not his fault, no? Or?
Well, he was happy that he returned back to his home, Rishikeshananda. And it was also the impetus of writing the book by Rupa Goswami about the nectar, what's it called? I'm trying to think of the Sanskrit. Not the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The Upadesha. Because that was one of the reasons why Rishikeshananda left, because there wasn't an English translation of the Upadesha. And Prabhupada decided to translate the Upadesha with the request of Rishikeshananda, as far as I know. Yeah.
Just a question. What were the challenges that were there when the Western devotees started to come to Vrindavan in the beginning? And did Prabhupada comment on that in relation with the local Goswamis or?
He told us to follow whatever rules that they followed, especially to do with solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. We had to close the temple. We also had 2 schedules. Mangalarti wasn't always the same time the whole year. There was a summer schedule and there was a winter schedule. So we still do that as far as I know. And he also said that we should learn from the Radharaman temple how to decorate the deities beautifully, and also how to create full bungalows made of flowers, sometimes vegetables, even paper money, and different festivals that they have for Radharani. Because Prabhupada was very close to Vishnu Goswami, who was the father of Padmanabha Goswami. And he said we should always keep good relations with them and learn from them because they're very expert. After all, they're coming in line from Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and they've been doing this deity worship for 500 years.
Yeah, because the time I had the great fortune to be in Mayapur, it is gonna Ekadashi one day in Gaudiya Math. At your time, was it the same day?
We followed the Gaudiya Math Panchika.
Okay.
So whatever, in fact Prabhupada said they're expert. Of course, now we say that we're expert also. Isn't it? I think this
it was very confused.
Shyam Sundar, who lives in South India, used to be in Texas. He's becoming like the official authority for the ISKCON Panchika. But Prabhupada didn't like this. He didn't like this, difference between the appearance of his Spurgeon master and like this. He didn't like that. And also, all of ISKCON around the world followed the same calendar, Vaishnava calendar.
So
it was very simple.
Yes.
But then it became, I think, and I'm not going to mention names, but there were certain personalities that thought that it should be more accurate.
So there we have.
Yeah.
So what should we do now?
2 days.
Well, there's also what's known as the Hindi Panchika, and the Hindi Panchika sometimes also differs. But things like Ram Navami or Holi, if we were celebrating a different day and sometimes in our calendar we're ahead of India instead of behind India. So, it's this. Yeah. And other big festival days like Holi too, and Ram Navami. So,
it's like last Ekadashi we had, and one of the on Facebook, it was the next day.
yeah.
Everybody, we have this quite, because when I'm in India, I take the UK card with me, and I'm thinking it's like, I'll see you tomorrow. No, it isn't.
It's quite different.
It is different. It doesn't happen very often, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a little Vaishnava calendar which is published from Mayapur. And it's printed there too, in Mayapur Press.
But it still differs. I'm talking about the ISKCON.
Yeah. It's a problem.
Yeah.
We didn't have that problem in the 70s.
No.
We were a lot simpler.
Yeah.
What was that with solar and lunar eclipse?
That's to do with what the temple should do, because when there's an eclipse, everything becomes contaminated. Now you can say, well, how can it be contaminated when in the holy Dham and chanting Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna purifies everything. The Prabhupada said, no, we have to follow all the same rules and regulations that they're following, otherwise they become upset. They'll start thinking, oh, these people are puffed up, they think no better than me, than us. So Prabhupada didn't want us to have that conflict of interest.
We see on the image when the murtis are installed, Prabhupada, he's not happy at that situation.
Oh, actually, he was very happy. He was very, yeah. But he told us later on, he said, actually, all we need to do is sit down and have kirtan.
And the bridge passing.
But he wasn't upset, no. And he was actually,
He was doing
yeah, he was brave, he looked brave.
very great.
But still, the deities were installed very, very successfully. It was very auspicious time. In fact, you can look at Prabhupada's photo. When he first went to the West, he had a passport photos taken. And one boy said, Prabhupada, why are you looking so unhappy? Prabhupada said, on that day I was experiencing transcendental ecstasy. Because he was fulfilling his Guru Maharaj's wish. So he was feeling ecstatic, transcendental ecstasy. And that devotee looked at his face and thought, oh, why are you looking so sad? Enough of this frivolity. We'll finish there. Thank you so much. let's see how many people come out and turn on Sankirtan on Sunday. Congratulations, everybody. I'm just praying it's going to be sunny that day. It's not raining.
A lot of